The vessel centering has a small ridge on the inside here that you know, each one of you want to see that and feel that. That actually helps hold it onto the glass a little tight. Just want to make sure the integrity of that is nice and fine.
It's like a graded plastic.
And it's got some pliability to it.
So, okay, thank you.
That being said, take this off and stop it from spinning. The next thing is the vessel inspection of the vessel hold down clips. That's these clips.
Okay.
All these clips should be. You don't want them.
It's not working.
It's not working.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, it's too tight.
Yeah, but if you unscrew it, then it will screw out.
Well, sometimes they do. See? Now it's not.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe it settles in 1 hour.
See? What happens is, I'll show you what happens here. Watch. Hand me the green screwdriver behind you. Green right there.
Oh.
On the side? Other side. Other side.
Okay.
Yes. The problem that causes it to spin like that is this. See this right here? This nut here. This nut gets compressed too tight up against there. So if you back this nut off a little bit, that should allow this to freely move around. And then you can put this back down inside here. And it should operate properly. Should. This could be old and need to be replaced. We'll see. There we go. Ideally, that's how they're supposed to work. And then it comes over and it should hold it down inside. You can move this around with some pressure, but it should hold it nice and firm. Basically what it's trying to do is hold it in place. It doesn't need to be over tight because the whole purpose of it is not to slam this down and hold it to where it doesn't move. The purpose of these is to hold it from the buoyancy of the water from coming out of the position. Because when you're running a chemical test, these get filled up with media. And that media is going to help settle it down inside the bath also. All these are here for is basically just to kind of hold it in place so it doesn't go anywhere. There can be some movement back and forth. Most labs have a tendency just to over-tighten these. Tighten them down, and then when you come out there, sometimes they snap, sometimes they're broken, sometimes they're like what we just found there with the nut too tight, and it's causing problems, because most people think it's supposed to hold it to make it not move. That's not the purpose. The purpose is just to hold it in place. So again, like I said, you can inspect each one of these, and ideally it should spin around without that center nut moving. If that center screw starts moving around, take it off, back the nut off on the back of it a little bit to where you get to where it works like it should, and then it should be fine. Again, as I
What
talk,
about this one? This needs a bit.
needs to be tightened a little bit. If any of these are snapped off, as I said before, one of the things that I tend to do if one of these is broken off, you can drill these out. If there's a broken piece that's out inside there, you can drill them out. I've always found in the past, 15 years of doing this, that drilling it out, you take a risk on elongating the hole itself. You can clip some of the, whenever you're using another metal material on metal, you're going to hit some of those teeth inside there, the threads, and you're actually going to damage the threads to where it elongates the hole. Once you elongate the hole, because this is plastic, it's going to be loose in there forever. It's never going to get tight again. And then I see people put plumber's tape on there in order to keep it in place. If you really want to make sure you don't damage the threads inside there, get a pick. Get a pick and just keep picking. It'll take you 5 or 10 minutes.
If it's damaged, you have a set, so you drill a bit more, and then it's
get a bigger screw?
Not a bigger screw, it's like a spring, like a wire, and then you put it in.
Yeah, you can do that.
And you have a smaller diameter.
True.
Then.
You could do that too. Or, you know what, in worst case scenario, if you're out in the field, another thing to do is take another one of these nuts here. If you put this down through there, if it goes all the way through and it's not threading in there, you can put the nut on the bottom. If you have to, you do it. Again, you might be someplace where you flew someplace, and you know what, you don't want to fly back there it's a 3-hour flight. You might want to take care of business while you're there. So hey, you do what you got to do when you're in the field. And then again, like I said, I have a T-tap.
3 hours. 3 hours you have to drive through.
Understand? 3 hours, 4 hours. So I'm saying a 3-hour flight.
It's 1 hour, that maybe even not that.
And then I simply have a.
Okay.
This is for now. Whenever you take one of these off and replace it, I always recommend running your threads through it again.
Is this metric
to make
or is
sure
it
it's clean.
in inches?
Imperial.
Imperial.
Yeah, it's good that you have Mr. Jones in the building. He can fix everything.
Can you buy in Slovenia Imperial?
Yeah, why not?
Thread cut. Yeah?
You must order them, but it's not a long wait.
There we go. All right.
For the common ones, they already.
All right. Again, verification of the height adjustment spacer, which this is your height adjustment spacer, just to make sure that it's properly labeled. Again, properly labeled is the basket side is for where the hole is up on top of here. It usually has this attached. Baskets on one side, and it should have paddles on the other side. Flat on here. This one has the raise. That's for the baskets. That way, when we go through the adjustment process, the way you adjust this, it works fine. These O-rings sometimes need to be replaced. Something you might want to think about on these things. That helps it to stay in place so it stays in there. A verification of the heater enclosure. As I talked to you over there, we talked the heater enclosure. This was a 6100. You need to check the integrity of the heater enclosure. You just make sure that the wires are attached to it. There's no frayed wires. It doesn't look like it's cracked. That the springs in the front are fine. These are still working good. These have a tendency to break on one side or the other, in which case that spring would need to be replaced. It's a bit of a pain to change it. You just have to take it's a nut. Since we're here in training, I might as well pull it off and show you. You want to make sure, if you have to change the spring out right here, there's a Phillips screwdriver on this side. That's the screw. Nut on this side, and it pulls the spring off, and of course it's covered in this sleeve right here. So you have to make sure the new spring, take the old cover off, put it on there, attach it on both sides to make sure that it works. You also want to, you don't have to take them off to inspect them, but when you're inspecting up there, make sure none of these are cracked. These have a tendency to crack with misuse and not hold it up in place, because all it does is simply these hang on these, the bottoms of these, hangs it in place. So that's all you're checking for is the integrity of this. Make sure that it's not cracked and broken and doesn't need to be replaced. So.
Normally, this has one part number as a heat engine.
This is?
Yeah.
You can buy. Well, you can buy it as an assembly, or you can buy this separately. This is the cover, the shroud. I should say. I think it's called the heater jacket shroud, and this is the heater jacket itself. The orange parts of the heater jacket. This is the shroud that goes on it, and this supports the spring. But you can buy this as an assembly.
But I mean, there is no part number for the sensor and part number for the heater.
There is no sensor on here. Not on these. This has just got a heater. There's two. It's a two-stage heater. There's a heater inside here, a lower heater, and an upper heater.
The sensor is just
The sensor is inside the shaft itself. Yeah.
Okay.
So no sensor inside here. That's not true with our disintegration systems. These actually have a sensor built into the heater jacket. So there's two different types of things. I don't know if you guys work on disintegration systems, but the 31 and the 3200 have a sensor built into the jacket. The bass don't have no sensor. The sensors for the bass are all located inside the RTD. Paperwork. What do I do with it? There it is. So now we're up to idle tension, which we looked up on top here. So I did go out all the steps, so I'm now going in steps. Here's the idle tension. We check all the tension on each one of the idle wheels and the belt wear. You're just checking to make sure it's in good condition, no cracks, not a lot of pieces missing. What you're really looking for is, again, each one of the teeth on the back of this thing should be rectangular. Over time, as they go around, they tend to get rounded. You can feel it. You can feel if it's nice and still sharp up on top here. I can feel it with my fingers. If there's a good ridge on there, the belt's still got some good wear on it. You can still continue to use it. If it's really getting smooth up on top and on the bottom of the teeth, it's getting worn. It needs to be replaced. No matter how much you keep on doing the tension. And another thing too is just to look and see how much play you still got. I still got a lot of space right here. See that gap right there? That means I still got lots of room to adjust that. If it's all the way that way, it's been adjusted about as tight as it's going to go. It's time to change the belt. Belt lubrication we talked about, lubrication of the bearing, the idle wheels, the spindles. You can do all that. Again, 3-in-1 oil is what typically we use. Inspection of the release lock, which is, we talked about the inspection of this to make sure that it works, if you need to adjust it. This is fine adjustment right here. That's your big adjustments in the back behind there. Inspection of the hydraulic actuator. Hydraulic actuator is, if you come in the back here, this is your hydraulic actuator right in the middle. And the inspection of that really isn't a visual inspection. It's a feel.
Functional.
You need to make sure that it's functional. Functional means if I hit that brake there, it's doing its job there.
Yeah.
Much like the hatchback of a car. It's holding it up.
Yeah.
If it slams down, if I push the brake in here and it bounces down, it needs to be replaced.
So I've seen just that it doesn't hold it. I had this most brake problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not actuator holding the.
It should come down a little bit, but it should
Yeah,
hold it
yeah.
right about in the
Yeah,
middle.
yeah,
The middle area is where it usually ends up holding it about at. I've seen it sometimes slowly go all the way down to the bottom. If I put the brake in, it's getting worn out. It's probably going to need to be replaced. Probably not. Maybe the next time. Maybe the time after that.
Yeah.
I usually tell the customer that, hey, we need to start thinking about changing this if you want to. I personally don't want to have to change it because it's a pain to change.
Me too.
But if I push this in and it slams down,
Yeah.
it's got to be replaced.
It's
So-
just shock absorber, right? It's
Yeah,
just-
and this unit here, the 6100, 6300, and the 5100, they're not so hard to change. The 2100 is a pain to change. And the reason it's a pain to change is because this one here just sits in there. That one there, it gets attached at the bottom, I think, and it gets or attached at the top, and it just sits in the bottom. On the 2100, it's attached at the top and the bottom, and there's a screw that has to go on the top. And the only way to hold it is you have to actually hold the unit up, and you have to get a screw through there, and you got to compress the hydraulic actuator down, and the screw has to go in there, and that screw, I should say not screw, a bolt. A bolt has to go in there, and that bolt, when it goes through the eyelet of the hydraulic actuator, in between that and the outside pieces, there's 3 holes it has to go through. There's washers that have to go in between. And you got to do all that with one hand. You got to push that bolt through and get the washers in there and get it through and it's a very difficult prospect. I would love to show you how that works, but I don't want to.
How do I get to the bottom part?
Yes. How do you get to it?
Yeah, you must remove all this electronics.
Yep. It all comes apart. What's the good thing is there's only 4 wires that have to actually be disconnected. Wait, no, I'm sorry. That's not true. That's on a 5100. On this one here, it's... You could just open it up. Yeah, actually, I got it. It's open. You turn power off. You just like these 2 connectors, this one, and that one, and you could fold it all the way down so you can get access inside. You don't have to remove this. You just have to have it to where it'll actually fold all the way down.
And we can access it from here?
No,
On this
from,
side?
from the back.
You have to access it from the
Yeah, the bottom, you have to get to it inside. From
Oh,
the
right,
back
the
back
bottom,
there.
right.
Yes. Actually, I'll just show you. We just turn it off and I'll show you. real quick. It just sits down inside there. But the only reason you need to get in there is when you're running it down to the bottom down there, you can look, you'll see. You have to make sure it gets in there because I put one in one time and it wasn't in there. And about 20 minutes after I put it in there, it slid into place and everybody in the lab heard it and everybody jumped because they thought something blew up. Because it made a really loud noise. It just, when it popped into place, it was loud.
Okay. Micro switch. Yes.
I did it once to my colleague. He was doing something with electrics. And I came behind him and grabbed him.
I've done things to a lot of people.
He's black, but at that time he was white like this.
I've done that with a lot of people that I work with. I've done a lot of things. There's things you play around with other guys that are happening. Scare them, get them going.
Okay, it was 12 volts only, so...
So how do you actually take out that actuator? It's lots of stuff you have to disassemble.
Nope.
Like all top stuff, right?
Watch. Where's my...
You can access it from the front, huh?
That part, yes. And usually there's 3 screws. Somebody didn't put the middle one in.
You just compress it,
Compress it. I'm not going to grab it right now, but yes.
compress it, and then take out.
Much.
Yeah.
Got it? See that? Put it back in there.
Let's see where I think it's now.
Is it?
It's in.
Okay.
It's in.
So it's just a matter of compressing it.
Compress it and then take
Well,
out.
you got to compress it. I would take this whole
The
thing
motor,
off.
the motor is also on the way. See how you can take it out. Which way? This way?
I typically take this right here. I would loosen the motor off.
Yeah.
The motor's going to have to come up loosened, and then I would compress it down to
And then-
about
yeah.
here and take it out that way.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So the new one
Esa es
is
la
probably
partida
coupled
Little tighter.
with wire, so that's
The new one is what?
usually if you get this, you get them compressed and it's wired together so that it's
No.
not in parallel position.
It's all the way out. Yep, they're not wired together.
Yeah. Are we going to talk about electronic problems later on, or?
Some of the electronic problems.
Yeah. I know that power supply might be causing inconsistent temperature readings. So on this model, I know that
Yes.
I get to exchange the power supply.
We've had to change the power supply. We've had to change the board itself. We've had some various issues with different things that go on electronically with it. There's a lot of things. We've had some inconsistencies with. They've made some modifications to them. They've changed some of the firmware. Right now, we're experiencing some issues with the with it going to up here. We've had some issues with it interacting with the way it interacts with the board. But that's all we'll talk about tomorrow. I want to get through the mechanicals and the measurements
Yeah,
today.
okay.
And then tomorrow morning from tomorrow morning up until about noon, I want to sit down and talk about troubleshooting problems that you guys have encountered
Okay.
and what we can do to get you guys better familiar with them. We can't cover everything, but we're going to cover some of the more important ones, the ones that you guys know
most
of,
common,
most common ones that you guys have.
So where's the cable for that?
Runs up. Right back here. Come around. If you go on that side here, see, it's in that side here. Come here.
I see.
Oh, you can feel it? Yeah. It runs up inside there. It's a ribbon cable. So. Yep, that's how you change the hydraulic actuator. But it's a pain. Like I said, it just takes it's a matter of getting everything up and out of the way, and then, and it's not even that, it's the compressing of it. It's a pain to compress that, to get it down and get it up out of the way. So, makes for a long day. Inspection of the magnetic pickup. As I talked about before on the motor, this is your magnetic pickup right here. There's an actual gap that it can be adjusted to. I'm not sure what it is. It probably has it in the documentation. If it's working, my motto is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it's working, if
don't touch it,
RPM
yeah.
all works, there's no reason to touch it. And it actually even says right here in the document, it says the gap between the drive motor and gear magnetic pickup must be appropriate. If the observed RPM is not erratic, the magnetic pickup is considered to be satisfactory. So if it's running like it's supposed to, that magnetic pickup is considered to be running fine. If you have to adjust the gap on it, I usually don't adjust it to a certain gap, even though it calls for an actual gap, so you get a feeler gauge out and actually adjust the gap on it, which would be the difference between the tip of this and the actual spinning portion of the motor down here. I usually will just loosen the nut on the back of this, and I'll start running it in and out until I get it to where it's actually
So
working the way it's
is it
supposed
good
to
to
work.
put it closest as possible, but not to
Well,
catch the gear, right?
I'll put it as close as I can, and then I'll slowly start backing it
Yeah.
off. And then you'll get to a point where the motor spins really fast. Because it's not
Doesn't
singing
read,
no more.
yeah,
So then you just adjust it in a little bit more, back to where it starts picking it up again. And at that point, that's when I tighten the nut down. So again, I typically don't use the gap of the feeler gauges and adjust the gap, just because it's a recommended setting.
Yeah.
It's not a must setting.
So you mentioned you sometimes clean the magnets on the motor.
Yes,
so
that's where they come
how
out
you-
right
How
here.
you get,
Right here, see these right here? These open up.
those are brushes
Yes, I'll
like,
show you.
like,
They're brushes, they're magnetic brushes.
you mean
I'll show you what
brushes,
they-
yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're
okay.
magnet, they're
Okay.
magnets.
Yeah, okay.
So, if you guys all know anything about motors and about what magnets, what the brushes look like, they're not actually brushes, they're actually a solid piece of magnetic material with a spring attached. I can pull one out just to show you.